The ICF Training and Technical Assistance Team is honored to welcome you to this California Housing and Community Development Community Workshop offered through the Emergency Solutions Grant, Coronavirus Relief Consulting and Services Contract. I'm Chris Pitcher from ICF, and today I'll be hosting the session. Today's training session is part of our Landlord Engagement, Recruitment, and Retention Workshop series, and we will finish our conversation today on centralized landlord engagement by practicing our pitch and talking about policies and procedures. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Abby Miller. Abby.
Thanks, Chris. All right, I'm going to spend 2 seconds on this. Action, obviously that's what we're doing today. We are going to be working through your policies and procedures, or what you're thinking about for them, and practicing the pitch. So that's about as actionable as it gets. I just said the same thing. I'm not gonna even pause on this. Okay, so how many people do we have? Great. Oh no, we have way more than that.
That was 15.
got 19.
You couldn't see. Yeah, well, that's
Oh, that was 15. Okay, great. I thought to get us started, if we had a reasonable number here, which I think we do actually, if folks could come off mute and actually introduce yourselves. Like there's been so much of us talking, but today is going to be so much interacting. So start getting to know each other now. And I'm going to stop sharing the slides while we do this. So if you're able, come on camera. All right. Got some cameras. Who wants to get us started?
I will. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Eleanor Vega, I'm here from Imperial County. I am ESGCV lead here in Imperial County as well as HMIS lead.
My name's Darnisha Hunter. I'm with the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. I'm the Director of Special Projects in San Diego, California. Nice to be here.
Oh, and Darnisha, with yours, why don't we start? Do you want to pop it to somebody just so we keep awkward silences to a minimum?
Sure, I'll throw it to Kat Durant.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kat Durant. I'm with the Regional Task Force on Homelessness in San Diego. I am the Chief Program Officer, and I oversee, we do a rapid rehousing learning collaborative that has become a rapid rehousing community of practice. That's why I'm here, hoping to share all this good information with them and get them represented in these meetings. Thanks. I'll pop it over to Dorothy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dorothy Eriks. I work for the Sonoma County Housing Authority, and I oversee our special programs and housing navigation team. And I'm going to pass it to Ty because he's also in my department.
Hello, everyone. Ty Hilton. I'm with the Sonoma County Community Development Commission. I'm with Ending Homelessness Team, which is just a different division of this state agency that Dot works for. And we are working together to kind of try and develop a program like this. And I will pass it to Rachel, who's also from our community.
Hi, I'm Rachel Salyer. I'm a housing navigator in the Transitional Age Youth Housing Program at TLC Child and Family Services, and my region is Sonoma County. Oh, and I will pass it to Michelle.
Hi, I am the housing program supervisor for Stand Up Placer here in Placer County, located in Auburn. So we do relocation, so rapid rehousing and transitional housing for domestic violence, sexual assault and human trafficking survivors. So we're a little bit more specialized, but still same mission, focused on ending homelessness. So I would pop over to Kat.
I already went.
Sorry, Chris.
Hi, I don't know what we're doing. Good to see everybody. I'm Chris Pitcher, the ESG CV Training and Technical Assistance Lead. And I am here to learn with all the rest of you about Landlord from Abby and Mindy. Abby and Mindy, can you get us back on track? Because I was not.
Absolutely. Yes.
The one thing that we're missing from everybody is the thing that I want to talk about the most is what are you guys most looking forward to with the change in seasons?
I didn't want to interrupt the flow by throwing the icebreaker back in there.
I put mine in the chat and I'll just get us started on this again. You're looking forward to allergies, Chris? That's weird. Mine in the chat is more sunshine. I definitely, when there is less light, it really affects my mood. And so when the time changes and there's more sunlight, it just makes everything better. So let's see who, Madeline, have we heard from you yet? Oh, gardening. Yes. Plants.
Hi, I'm Madeline Bryan. I'm an analyst for the housing programs in Siskiyou County. And I'll throw it to Sarah Moore.
Go ahead, Sarah. Where is Sarah? Oh, there she is. Sarah might not be on.
Possible. Yep.
Yeah.
Why don't we kick it to Latoya then? Oh no, we're striking out. Karen, are you there, Karen?
Oh, sorry, Sarah. Sarah's mic is not working.
I am here. Karen Martinoli, Housing Manager for Catholic Charities. And I'm looking forward to it getting lighter in the morning because I get up at 5 and when I walk, it's still so dark. And just looking forward to it to get light again in the mornings. Thank you.
Great. Annika?
Hi, my name is Annika. I am a housing specialist at Abode Services here in Santa Cruz County. And I am also looking forward to more sunshine. And I will pass it on to Melissa if she hasn't gone.
Hey everyone, I'm Melissa Kopp with Lake County Behavioral Health Services. I am the senior analyst here and the HMIS administrator. I'm also a part of the Housing Navigator Committee here in Lake County. And I am looking forward to all the pretty flowers. And I'm going to pass it over to Natalie.
Sorry guys, I don't have a camera. My internet connection is not that great. Natalie Baker, I'm the chair of Lake County Housing Navigators, work alongside Melissa. And springtime, sunshine, definitely liking the sunshine. That's the best part of it. Who has yet to go? I feel like I'm gonna call on the wrong person.
I think Katerina.
Katerina.
Yes. Hi, Katerina Mariti, housing locator, Catholic Charities. And I missed the beginning, so I don't know. Everyone's talking about sunshine, but I don't know why. So is there a question we were supposed to answer?
What are you most looking forward to in the spring and summer?
Oh, gardening and just being out and about in the sun.
Thank you.
Okay.
Julianne.
Hello, I'm Julianne Fisher, she, her pronouns, and I am with the Youth Navigation Center for Stanislaus County, and I'm the housing placement coordinator, so I oversee all of our permanent housing for our transitional age youth. And I'm super excited for all of the fresh produce and for my tomato and jalapeno plants to get huge so I can make lots of salsa. I'm ready.
Salsa. Nice. I think Valerie?
Yes. Hi, my name is Valerie Price. I am a program specialist for rapid rehousing at Shelter Inc. in Solano County. As of sunshine, I love taking my family to the beach, so it's going to be hot enough to actually go there and be in the water.
And then I think we just have Alma, unless I miscounted.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alma Vasquez of Regional Task Force on Homelessness here in San Diego, California. I mean, I could say sunshine, but we have sunshine all the time. So I would say what I'm looking forward to that's coming up in spring and summer is baseball season. I got some Padre season tickets now, so I'm gonna try that out. So I'm looking forward to that. I am our COC program coordinator, so I'm responsible for monitoring our COC funded projects. And I also provide technical assistance to our diversion training that we've developed for our community, as well as just supporting any other COC funded related activities.
I think you've all heard me say this before, and I'll just keep saying it because every time somebody from San Diego talks about San Diego, I'm like, every time I'm in San Diego, I'm like, why don't I live here? Like,
cost of living, I would say cost of living.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but then again, other areas
like,
yeah,
oh,
cost of
the
living.
sunshine.
It's great. That's why I was like, I don't know if I could say that because I get to enjoy it year round. Like the other day, I mean, or this week, it's been in the high 80s.
Ooh, that's getting a
so
little
it's
warm.
actually been, I was like, are we in summer?
Yeah.
Like we're not even in spring yet.
Excellent. I am sitting in a very rainy New York City and
Yeah,
not loving it. Not loving
rainy,
it at
gloomy
all.
Baltimore here.
Okay. So, sorry, let me go back. So we are basically spending all of the rest of our time talking with the people who are on here. So can I get actually like a show of hands for if you want to stay together as a full group, or if you want to break out into 2, maybe 3 groups?
Or pop in the chat. What's your preference? I think you guys are a small enough group to have a full group. Yeah.
Full group, full group. Okay, great. Okay, we will hang out here then.
Spencer is a fan of full groups.
Yes, the more the merrier. All right. So the first thing that we're gonna work on together as a full group is actually taking the time, if you have not already, to start to write down, talk out loud if you need to. This is a choose your own adventure, like the best way that you process things today. If you want to listen and write, that's fine. If you need to talk it out, that's great. What are the elements of the pitch that you are going to use for a centralized landlord engagement process? So, you know, I was paying attention to who's here. Like I'd say maybe half of you are in individual agencies, half of you are representing a system. If you are on with an agency, but you've been thinking about this, about the centralized engagement method, that you think about what's worked for your agency, what's going to translate, what isn't, to the centralized approach. And this is just a laundry list. I'm not even going to go through all of these, but just reading through as little prompts, you know, what are the things that you would want to highlight? Can I just go like full school teacher here, and maybe we all take like 5 minutes to just cameras off, think, and then we come back on? Think, write, kind of get your thoughts together. It's going to be an awkward moment for the person joining right now, but
maybe 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
Because you're making a pitch, elevator pitch. Get on it.
Yep. Okay. You know that somebody just joined. We are doing a quick silent, just grouping our heads around what sort of pitch, an elevator pitch, you would do for a centralized landlord engagement. Flipping cameras off and just thinking and writing. How was that for everyone? If you can come back on camera, give me a sense of, if that was enough time, we can take another couple minutes. If not, Julianne, how was that for you? Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing so we can all see each other again. Latoya, calling in for my case manager's lunch. Amazing. Oh, you're muted. All right. So who wants to get started talking about what you're thinking?
I don't think Latoya knew she was still muted.
Oh, no.
I just realized. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, we're just saying Blanca's leaving here, that's all. Okay, I'm typing up my thoughts.
Okay.
Okay.
Who wants to get us started?
I just wanted to make sure because I wasn't sure I caught the whole point of the slide was to say, what are we focused on like with this training? I would say for us would be making sure that we're making the right connections and kind of fostering that relationship. We have repeat landlords that allow us to rent to our clients, but creating that communication between why they should share that information with other landlords or how that works and why it's beneficial becomes a challenge because a lot of our clients are high needs. And when I say high needs, like our vulnerability scores are like 17 and higher for some of them that are placed. So we do end up with a lot of tertiary things that happen afterwards. So it can often become burdensome with our landlords. I wouldn't say often, I would say like on a 50% ratio right now. So that's something that we want to kind of take away from this training is if there's any way that we can adjust that. I mean, maybe make that relationship a little bit sweeter or how we can, create that positive environment between both sides.
Yeah. I think you came to a very good day because you're going to be hearing a lot from colleagues and peers about how to do that. And I think I'd say, one targeted thing in response to what you're struggling with, what we're talking about today about, making the pitch, I think is obviously only this much of what needs to happen. So it's about, can I pitch things that are actually reality? And making those things meet in the middle is really important because you don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver, which can have some pretty rapidly deleterious effects on that relationship.
So part of the making the pitch thing is anticipating where landlords are going to be like, oh, hey, whoa, wait a minute. And some of that is about like, wait, you have clients who have been on the streets for 20 years, have serious mental illness, like all the other things like criminal backgrounds, like all of that kind of stuff. So what do you guys think about? Like, how do you pitch that? What's the pitch around those kinds of things? I see Ty's hands. Right.
Yeah, so I interpreted it as like do a role play. Was that not?
Yes.
You can do that too.
But
okay.
You know what? Yeah.
Hey, I'm a landlord.
If you have a role play,
okay, I'll take a stab at it. So if you're the landlord, I would say, hi, I'm from the Sonoma County Community Development Commission, and I'm working with a bunch of agencies that are trying to use housing vouchers to house individuals experiencing homelessness. Now that may be kind of a scary thought. Obviously there's a lot of homelessness in Sonoma County and you have an asset that you'd like to protect. However, I'd like to just get a couple of minutes and explain to you why I think it's a good idea for you to rent to us. First and foremost, all of our clients that we're going to refer to you are going to be supported by an agency. So if they are struggling with some type of physical or mental impairment, we're going to be there to support them. We have this single contact that you can contact at any time if you have any difficulties with that client, and we will make sure that we get somebody out there. Now, that's not something you're probably used to dealing with as a landlord. You're probably worried about your asset and making money. So we also have this risk mitigation fund that we'll sign you up for. So if our client damages your unit in the excess of the deposit, you don't need to worry about that. We will provide X amount of money to cover that. We're also we also can make other incentives. We have a signing bonus. If you refer another landlord, we may be able to provide you with another bonus. We think that even if you're taking a risk, we're kind of mitigating those risks right now through the risk mitigation fund and providing this case management support. But we're also here to support you through having a contact. Sorry, that's just what I came up with in 2 minutes.
That was beautiful. Thank you. You hit on it.
Chris is your latest landlord, Ty. You got any clients that want to move to Denver?
So who on here has actively pitched before? Does anyone?
I have.
I think Alma's head is shaking too. So tell us, Michelle and Alma.
We have to do that pitch on a regular basis. We do have that conversation about the case management. We do weekly case management, so in-home visits, also in office. We are trying to partner with, so Stand Up Plus are at a little bit of adjustment, and we are like rebuilding the housing department in a different way that's going to be more focused towards their progress instead of just like maintaining contact. So with those financial classes and ready to rent classes, being able to provide that like stability and also just that empowerment. But like I said, because of the nature of our clients, and when we're doing trauma-informed care, we have that finesse that we have to work with on having those conversations. And like you said, building that reality, bridging that gap between reality and what we're actually able to offer. Reality is that some of those clients are not always good at the participation, because we're housing first. Participation isn't necessarily mandatory, and we can't make it mandatory. However, when they do sign those contracts and they're saying, yes, I'm agreeing to this participation, we kind of use that to move forward and either referring to another agency if they're not going to be successful with us, and or reaching out for a higher level of care. But when it comes to the landlords, I think it's getting tricky on the side that if we've already used them and then they had a negative aspect, that's the one I'm more focused on trying to foster, because we want them to have that positive relationship and then also share that information with other landlords that are on the table. So pitching that, like, we have the support, we have the resources, they're getting linked up with other agencies like the education side, maintaining the kids' schools, or whether it's food, it's legal. We have legal within our agency. We have all of those things, but making sure that conversation stays a little more on the positive side has been the challenge when we do have those negative experiences.
I wonder if folks have ideas about, I mean, and this has come up in other contexts. And I think it's part of the, like, when, especially if you're going to do centralized landlord engagement and you have folks coming from multiple different programs that are part of just the community effort on this. Do folks have ideas about a specific pitch to a landlord that's been burned?
I'll jump in.
Natalie.
Natalie. I think because first off, the initial pitch is always the hardest, right? To get someone to work with us. But someone will feel very much more justified if they have been burned in saying no, right? So the second pitch is harder in that aspect. What I would say is it's more about having a relationship throughout, not waiting until something gets completely out of control before you make contact with that landlord.
Yeah.
I've had clients cycle out where, you know, they did wonderful for the first several months. Everybody was happy. The landlord was just wonderfully elated. And then, you know, it can happen within a week to a month and everything is different. So definitely, I think the case management portion comes into play of what's the check and balance going to be. And then also having that realistic conversation on the front end as well, is that, you know, sometimes landlords will say, well, what are my guarantees? And I always make sure that that's not a word I use. We don't give guarantees. I can tell you how I can mitigate risk. I can definitely tell you what kind of incentives I can offer, but there is never a guarantee. And the reality is that, you know, not every client is going to stay in a sustainable situation. So I think it's not just about having that second conversation. It's about really solidifying your first conversation and your continual engagement.
I love that you brought that up, because part of the pitch in the beginning, or with landlords that have been burned, or with anybody, it's like, you don't have guarantees for any tenant that you have, right? Like, I mean, the barriers that landlords put in place, barriers that we call them, are they're doing risk mitigation. They're trying to get closer to guarantee that those things that are important to them, having rent paid on time, no vacancies, no damage to the unit, good neighbors, right? Like those things that are important to landlords, all of the stuff that they're putting in place that we call barriers are just ways that they're trying to mitigate their own risk to get close to guaranteeing all of those things. So no tenant that they have comes with those 100% guarantees, right? So I think that's a really good point, and that's part of the pitch, and that's part of the reality checking. Someone, Natalie, maybe it was you who said, we have reality check conversations with clients, right? And we should have reality check conversations with landlords too. Anyone else have thoughts about that?
I want to expand on that. So I think bringing it back to, yes, what you can offer, and also the reality testing that you spoke about, that, you know, all tenants across the board, they landlords have probably experienced having to potentially have to kick out someone for violation on their lease. So that's common across the whole community, that not just specifically to an unhoused population. So just reemphasizing like that ongoing support that these tenants would have with the case management, the centralized point of contact, if you know, and that we would strive to be more preventative in nature in our actions. So like, you know, we will be maybe doing more check-ins just to see how things are going. You know, feel free to contact me if there's ever an issue or you have a concern. We're here to listen. And so before it gets to that level of having to consider maybe evicting someone, you want to be able to have an opportunity to help you resolve that matter, so you don't have to go through those steps. And then again, reemphasizing the other things, like, but if it does so happen, you know, this is what it might look like, how you can access the contingency fund, or, you know, or if you're concerned about one thing, like I wanted to add to Ty's pitch, if you offer like more from the beginning, but like the double deposit, you know, so if you feel like there might be retaliation, the client damaging it, like that's something that you could step in, and we'll work to, you know, together to try to either fill that unit with someone else. You know, we have also partnerships. I mean, I'm just hoping we don't have a centralized model right now, but we have a lot of different models going on. So I'm just kind of going off of that. Like we have partners with other agencies that could, you know, fill like take up and fill up like with Brilliant Corners, could step in and potentially just hold that and pay the rent until we find another unit. So like we can utilize other resources that we have in our community. So yeah.
I love that you brought that one up, because I think that's one of the selling points that we maybe don't think about. I think when one of the, again, because we're having this this conversation is specifically in the context of centralized landlord engagement, and there are some benefits to that, and it's just that maybe you potentially have more resources, you're pooling.
Am I the only one who can't hear Mindy?
I think it might be you. Sorry.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So thinking about that with the centralized piece of it, and that you can when you guys come together as a community and kind of, it's like a pooling of resources. One of the things that other tenants don't have, again, this is a selling point here. If you have worked out a way as a community to say, like, actually, if something did go sideways, you don't have to go through eviction. You don't have to have a vacancy. You don't have to pay for damages, right? Like, and those are all things that quote unquote normal tenants don't come with, right? And those, again, are part of things that landlords are trying to avoid and trying to get at with all of these barriers that they put up to achieve guarantees. So I think that's another great selling point. And it's something that maybe when you do things in a centralized way, you can kind of maximize that selling point because you're pooling resources, either financial resources or just brain trust kind of resources, or connections to other parts of the community like legal services and stuff like that, or mediation and those kinds of things. Natalie in the chat says, if a problem has already happened, backtrack to where it went wrong. People appreciate honesty and responsibility. Absolutely. Love that one. Let them know how we can do better. Trying to save the relationship. Yeah, 100%.
Mindy, I was gonna ask the group a question of what you were just talking about like the benefits of centralizing. What, if at all, have people experienced on here with moving from individual agency to system-wide and having previously tarnished reputations of individual agencies get in the way of that, of that trust building? Has anybody dealt with that and have any not magic?
I can definitely speak to this one.
Go ahead, Natalie.
So we, the Housing Navigators for Lake County, kind of organically came together to be less siloed. So, hey, we know we're going to get this work done, better and more efficiently if we work together. But keeping in mind that we are still all individual agencies and we are not centralized enough to all offer the same thing. But we are at least trying to have a centralized pitch, right? Kind of have the same branding, the same wording, what have you. When we did our 2 Hello Landlord campaigns, where we actually tried to market specifically to landlords that have multiple units, and I would get calls and they would say, because when we did the flyer, we put all agencies on board, their branding was on the flyer. So they can see that, it's the whole county, but they would call and say specifically, they'd have a burn story. I worked at this one agency and it all went south. And let me tell you my sad story and all the money I spent. It's always, big dollars, that kind of thing. It sticks with them. We did give them the option of that, because we were trying to create like a centralized data list. We gave them the option, if they wanted their name to be on the centralized data list that everyone can pull from. And then they are always able to say, that they do or don't want to work with a particular agency. Because if we just say, well, they won't work with this one, so they're not going to work with us at all, you're cutting out, maybe 8, 9, 10 other agencies that they could possibly work with. The other thing is that a couple of those that called that explained all of the bad situations they've been through, another pitching point was that, there's a lot more funding coming down than like for this particular situation. It was a while back. And the resources were not available to be able to help, right? And landlord mitigation funds and all of these things that are just now, coming about. So I definitely tried to jump into the, like, I understand you've been burned, but let us tell you what we can do now, right? And of those 4 that were like, I will not work with, XYZ agency, 2 of them we saved to be open-minded to working with anybody, so.
Natalie, did you First of all, thank you. That was really well delivered and really well done in the community. Did you, oh goodness, I just lost my train of thought. I'm about to be 40. How is this possible?
Oh, it's only going to get worse.
Thanks, Cindy.
True story.
I'm 50 this year.
I wrote it down. I can't even read my notes. Oh, sorry. Got it. Did you, when you got those resistant landlords to come in, did you say that you allowed them to opt out of working with one particular agency if they really had a burn story that they couldn't get over?
Yeah, if they 100% were like, that is a non-negotiable, I will not work with, you know, whatever that agency is, I wouldn't want to burn the whole relationship because like I said, there's still all these other agencies that they could partner with. So we still want to have like that communication open. But I think the more that they see that we're a united front and the more that they see that we have things to offer them, right? Our pitch changed from, hey, we're in crisis, we need help, to let us tell you what we can do for you as a landlord. And I think even just that kind of changed the game in having them be at least open-minded. And then if they really at the end of the day are like, hey, I had a client come from said agency and I don't want to do this, that's their prerogative. They don't have to, but we want to keep the relationship open.
I think that's a really great workaround.
Yeah, and I think as we talked about in previous sessions, like one of the benefits of landlord engagement, centralized landlord engagement, is that you don't have this inconsistency across providers about who's offering what incentives, who's doing a better package, who has more access to risk mitigation funds, which can itself lead to disparities among different clients getting access to landlords and smaller programs getting access to housing for their clients, which has implications for racial equity, all of that kind of stuff. And I think the centralized piece kind of takes away, and I'm talking about something even more formal than what you guys have done, Natalie, which is really smart if you don't have like a formal system-wide centralized navigation. I think it takes away some of that, like being able to reassure landlords that this is not all on an individual provider. This is all of us as a community. Now, you still have to, this is where if you're going to do centralized landlord engagement, you got to be really, really thoughtful about it and really committed to being there for landlords, because if the system burns a landlord, oh, then what, right? Like then there's nobody else. So there's always that balance when you're thinking about moving something to like the community level, the collective impact model. There are other considerations that you have to do. So it could be a great pitch to say like, hey, landlord, you don't even have to worry about the X provider who may have burned you in the past, because now we're doing this as a community, right? But then if one landlord says, well, like county of, I won't name any California counties because I don't want to make anybody feel bad, but the county of X, the county itself really screwed us, then nobody's going to work with the county at all. And then everybody is going to struggle, right? So Natalie, I like that you guys are kind of trying to find that balance there without going fully centralized. And making sure that when you are centralizing, that part of your messaging and part of your pitch is selling that piece of it too.
Did you see Natalie's question? Yeah. Is there anyone on the call that has a fully centralized program?
Okay, I was just hoping so, because that's exactly where we're stuck. So I was hoping to like pick someone's brain, right? We were collaborative, we're not centralized. And I mean centralized in that anyone can walk in and offer the exact same incentives, and we don't necessarily have that. So in our marketing, we simply say we can offer incentives. We don't get specific until it's the agency conversation.
Okay.
Carrie, your hand is raised?
Yep.
So I just wanted to, Natalie and I have had conversations. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm actually in an office today, so I was like, I don't know if you can hear me or not. So, but we've had a couple of conversations, and there's some pushback, from people in decision, our decision makers, pushing back like, well, we don't need that. It's always worked this way, or, and it's kind of, it's frustrating in the sense that no, it hasn't worked. We're more productive now as a COC than we've ever been. But listen to what they're doing over in Tulare County, or listen to what they're doing in, another county. And we need that here. And so just getting that information to like the right person, I think is what we have to focus on. We just have to keep talking about it, So because like Natalie said, we do collaborate. But another issue that I've seen is, like Lake County Behavioral Health has the full service partnership program. And so, we can cover damages, but then, we end up paying $10,000 for damages, and there's no limit, and I heard somebody, I think it was Tulare County was talking about, having those maximum amounts. And, I think, I think as a coalition, we need to come together, and we need to have that ability to say, okay, anybody that's under this umbrella and you rent to one of our clients, these are the terms. They'll have case management weekly that progresses to less, and then more if we need to increase it, So I'm just hoping that the right person hears the right information.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have a pitch to make before you even make it to the landlords.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to be able to, convince all of these decision makers, who have their hearts in the right place, but maybe not necessarily a complete understanding of what this is.
Yeah.
So we have to definitely educate everybody on the COC, the community, on what centralized landlord engagement can look like.
Mhm. Has anyone on the call gotten that far where you have your leadership fully
You're ready
on board?
to pitch leadership?
I mean, we've pitched it at the COC meeting several times already, Stanley. And we actually started as a work group outside of the COC. And then we just, like I said, very much organically just came together. And then what we thought was like, well, maybe it would give us more legitimacy to run under a COC, to run under ours.
Now I'm kind of wondering if we needed that legitimacy, Natalie.
I'm wondering, they're either going to get really tired of us, or they're going to give us what we need. But one of those two things is going to happen, because they're going to continually hear the same thing of, this is what other people are doing. This is what is more effective, and this is how we level up. And we're going to keep bringing that same message every time, because it's just what has to happen next, right?
And I don't know what the situation is with your system leadership in Lake County, but in a lot of smaller places, the leaders are also the executive directors of the agencies. And it, thinking at a system can read like, oh, I'm losing turf, I'm losing territory, I'm losing dollars that, where I'm touting, there are all of these other things that that those folks are dealing with as well. And, it's actually, I had not considered thinking about making the pitch up and out, but you do have to.
Yep.
You have to figure out how to overcome that.
Oh,
Natalie, nobody wants the liability. Like, and that's part of that when we talked about the balancing out. If you're doing this at a centralized, there's potential negatives from centralized, right? And that's the stuff you kind of have to talk through. But I think it is thinking about, I think on the balance, if you do centralized landlord engagement in a productive way that we've talked about on a lot of the calls that we've done, the benefits outweigh the potential costs. for all the reasons that we talked about. So then I think part of that making the pitch is making the pitch to your leadership about why. And when, Abby, I love that you brought up, because a lot of times the COC in smaller places is just providers, and providers have their interest as providers, right? And that's part of why the concept of a continuum of care came into existence, is to say, you can't all be just acting as individual providers doing your own thing. That is great for the individual people that you serve that happen to be lucky enough to get into your programs, but it does not solve the community-wide problem of homelessness. To do that, we have to all come together. And so that's part of that conversation that happens at the COC level. Universal low barrier. Yeah. Yes. all of that has to happen. So sometimes it's just the hard conversation of reality checking with us, like, what hat am I wearing? If I'm wearing a provider hat, let me acknowledge that I have particular interests as a provider that may or may not be the best interest of my community in ending homelessness, right? Other folks have ideas before we move on to the next part of the conversation? Right. Pitching landlords.
I am completely new to landlord engagement, but my family's background is in real estate, and they have a real estate investment company, and very small for large counties, but for a small county like Siskiyou County, they have a substantial number of units. So I often come at it from that perspective.
That's awesome.
And I will note that tenants often do terrible things to apartments, and not just in affordable housing, but in really nice housing sometimes. You know, my dad will tell me stories about a fire going off recently in an apartment, or someone letting the tub leak. So there's a lot of danger to renting in general. So just kind of using that as a starting point. Yeah. While renting to tenants is risky, but only programs have any security, right? With the rest of with your regular renters, you know, they just have a security deposit, but they're risky too.
I love that. I feel like everybody should steal that and take it, tuck it in their pocket. Also, I can say my partner flooded our bathroom by leaving the tub on. So yes, it can happen anywhere.
Oh no.
Yeah, grease fires, disasters are happening all the time.
Yeah, my dogs almost burned my house down. So there was a pizza box on a gas stove, and they wanted the pizza box and accidentally hit the stove on.
Apparently, yeah, pets cause a lot of house fires. And now I'm paranoid looking at my cats here. True story. I hate that bathtubs have that thing that lets the water leak out at a certain level, and I tape it, because I want my bath to be a soaker tub, and it's not a soaker tub. So I tape those things. So it's entirely possible that something could go wrong. And because I have taped the little release valve, I could flood my whole apartment. And there's no case manager to handle that for Mindy Mitchell.
There's no case manager to handle my dogs either. So, you know.
I like this approach a lot. I feel like, because most of us here are like sitting in the homelessness perspective, like looking out to landlords, but that idea of just no, this isn't even like an affordable housing thing. This is like apartments get destroyed all the time.
The other thing, Madeline, that I like about this, and we've talked about this before, is just the importance of either when you're doing this as collaborative, as a program, especially in a centralized version of this, is having folks with real estate and rental and property management experience that can talk the talk and can acknowledge, like Madeline has done with her family, and saying, like, this happens all the time. This happens all the time. I know because I've done there. I know because I've lived it. Like, let me tell you about the worst case scenario that happened with, you know, the wealthy doctor that rented while she was on, you know, a fellowship with Johns Hopkins, which is my neighborhood, right? Like, there's actually a lot of those kinds of tenants in my neighborhood. And guess what? That person was never homeless. That person had a ton of money to pay for rent and still burnt my damn apartment down, right? Like, so I love that part of it. And that's like one of the huge best recommendations for doing this well.
Yeah. Maybe don't focus on pets too heavily because we want them to accept
You guys have all seen my
pets.
cat. Yeah.
The other, one of the other takeaways I've had from, you know, kind of discussing with my family their perspective on housing programs and is, I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
Oh, good. Now I don't feel
Oh
so
no,
bad.
I think it's catching.
Pandemic life. It's pandemic life. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just think on that for a second and see if it comes back to me.
I don't know if that's me spreading or if it's just this day, but I really appreciate that you also.
No,
lost
I
it.
think it's all of us now.
Yeah, it just is.
You know what, that gives me, every once in a while, I like to say this and acknowledge this, that we are all doing this amazing work and such hard work. And in the middle of just really, really rough times. So honoring all of that and all of you for showing up for these webinars, for having these conversations. And remember, landlords are struggling with this too. And the people that we serve are struggling with this too. So brain fog, totally okay. When it comes back to you, Madeline, pop it in the chat. Natalie,
I actually do remember what I was trying to say.
Okay.
So there, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on client choice, and I completely value that and I acknowledge that importance. But I think that the landlords also want choice too. And so it's a bit of a balancing act, but, you know, acknowledging the cultural barriers that you might be up against when you're trying to recruit a new landlord. Like, I think that veterans are a very sympathetic group in Siskiyou County. And I think a landlord is going to want to see a person and shake their hand before they rent to them, and acknowledging that, kind of trying to acknowledge that interpersonal and human factor. And maybe that's more important in a small county. I don't know if it's as important in a large county, but it definitely is here. And acknowledging that the landlord is going to need that kind of choice. And along that, I might educate landlords on fair housing at the same time, but yeah, so that's something else to consider. And when you're trying to reel in a new landlord.
That's a great point. And it gets back to that whole, like, it's all a balancing act, right? And another thing about choice that always comes up when people talk about client choice, this actually, a youth provider told me this a long time ago, and I tell this story all the time, but choice happens for all of us within our realities, right? Like, my choice might be to live in that $1 million corner row house down the street from me, but my reality is I have a certain income that I make and I will never be able to afford that one. So I live in this studio apartment here just down the street from that. Yeah. So those are also true with landlords too. Like part of the reality of landlords having choices that they have to do it within the context of fair housing. But also the reality is, you know, part of the selling point, veterans are very, you know, appealing. There's a reason why veterans homelessness gets so much money, because Republicans, Democrats, everybody loves veterans and loves to fund veteran stuff, right? So that's the reality of that. It also gave us a really great proof point for ending homelessness, right? Like when the money is in there and people do things in a systematic way, you can actually end veterans homelessness. So there was good and bad that happened there too. Thank you for bringing that up, Madeline. And Natalie, I think you had your hand raised. Was it the question in the chat?
Yeah, because to go back to when you're saying that you know, it helps to have someone in real estate background. So I am a realtor. I've been a licensed real estate agent for 12 years. I also do the social work side. But what I will say is that from strictly a realtor standpoint, I pitch this every time I come in contact with landlords, and not just from when we're trying to recruit, but for landlords that just call and say, hey, I've got a house, can you list it for me for rent, right? I continually pitch it, continually. But me, even myself as a realtor, I mean, my success rate of those pitches is probably less than 5%. And so if anyone has a specific go-to, because what it always comes down to is that, you know, of course, landlords are like, I want the best credit, I want the best references, and I want top dollar. And the reality is that we can't offer top dollar, especially if we're working with vouchers and such. And then even if it's not vouchers, that people would have to be into shared housing to be able to meet what, you know, landlords are wanting. So I was hoping someone maybe just had a go-to for, because we all have the same experiences, right? The same things keep coming up. So.
Great question. Anybody have go-to pitches that they use, or just ideas? Let's brainstorm some stuff. This is a huge one.
Because what it comes down to is a landlord is going to say, like, this is things I've actually heard. So you want me, you know, they start with that.
Yeah.
To take looks. And it's someone that doesn't look good on paper. And, right? And so I can typically battle most of those other ands.
Yeah.
But the money's the money, right? A voucher is worth what it's worth. The federal standard's what it is.
Anyone? Ideas?
Well,
at least
you look like
stuck
you
at the
have
same
something.
I know in our county, one of the things that has come up was talking to the landlords about if they're experiencing high vacancy rates in the units, if they're listing them at high amounts and they're actually leaving the units vacant for longer periods in time, talking to them about the amount of funds that they're actually losing by having to have a unit sit vacant, looking for their ideal tenant for months on end.
So Dorothy, when you did that, did you actually like run the numbers for them? Like you're losing 600?
Yeah, one of our navigators actually approached an entire complex and got 10 units, you know, at a lowered rate at a complex that was not being able to fill their units. So.
Very nice.
Wow, great example. That's where Natalie too, I think somebody that yeah, you have a low inventory, but having someone, I think we talked about this, to the extent that you can have a more sophisticated centralized landlord, that there's somebody who can run those kinds of numbers, right? That has that kind of real estate economic background. Again, there's the issue of low inventory. And I think this is the one that's the hardest nut to crack for me. There is just that reality there. And part of that is the reality. Maybe we're reality checking ourselves. And then shared housing just has to be an option, right? Like it's something. And then that's a whole other level of landlord engagement that you have to navigate there. No easy answers here. And I feel for you guys with the low inventory. I will say too, and again, I think this is different in every community, but I know in a lot of communities where there are really low vacancies in multifamily, there are higher vacancy rates in single family homes. And those may or may not be individual or one or two or mom and pop kind of landlord folks. And those are good opportunities because they're usually a couple of bedrooms for making shared housing matches. Yes, shared housing training.
So do we want to talk about policies and procedures? Or do we want to hang out on the pitch? Policies and procedures. Pitch.
So fun.
Okay. P's and P's. Mindy, do you want me to pull that slide up?
Sure. Okay, so this, you guys have seen this before. Again, we're just kind of like touching base to move on to the next part of our conversation. Policies and procedures, really not sexy, really important, right? This is especially for a centralized program on landlord engagement that needs to be really there and on it. You've got to have this roadmap for how things are going to run day to day. When decisions need to be made, there's the guidance there for how to make those decisions. And it's just a way to make sure that we're streamlining, which is the benefit of centralized landlord engagement. So the things that you want to be covering in your policies and procedures are, what do these incentive payments look like? What are the bonus levels? Like we talked about, like you want to make sure there is some kind of cap on it. You can't just be going forever and forever and forever. Who's eligible for what are we going to require? This is going to be a give and take, right? Like it's not just we're just giving landlords whatever they want. Like we need to be getting something from them too. So what do we require from landlords if we're going to be giving them extra incentives? You want to be very clear about those risk mitigation fund guidelines, especially because you ideally are going to be using more flexible funding for that, and you can't just it can't be like $30,000 for a client. Like there's got to be some cap on that too. Really, really, really important, especially for centralized landlord engagement, is making sure that you are available for landlords, having in your policies and procedures what that response time is going to look like, who landlords are able to get in touch with. Remember, this is one of the big selling points that you have for landlords that other tenants don't come with. When something goes wrong, when my cats start a fire, I'm knocking wood that they don't actually start a fire, but there is no one for my landlord to call to work that out. And then having those centralized messages, consistent messages like Natalie talked about on the collaborative model that they're doing, so that we're not a whole bunch of individual providers saying different things to landlords. We're going to have this in our policy, what our messaging is into landlords. And again, related to being responsive, what your hotline functions are. So next slide. Okay, this is where hopefully you guys have had a chance to pull up on your computers. We can lose this slide and go back to seeing all our beautiful faces.
Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, Michelle, we'll send these slides out. Everything will go out, and I think it's being recorded too, so you'll be able to access it. So let's talk about your policies and procedures. I know no one on this call has a full-blown official centralized landlord engagement, but let's talk about policies and procedures that you do have or that you're working on drafting. What do you guys have so far on those things like incentives, hotline functions, how you're going to be responsive to landlords? Somebody want to talk about what they have or what they're thinking about, what they're drafting, and we can kind of workshop some stuff.
I'm happy to jump in. I need a reiteration on specific. What would you mean currently?
Yeah, I mean, and Natalie, I think you guys are a good example because you've brought it together. You're doing a collaborative, right? So I assume in a collaborative, you don't yet have like policies and procedures in place, or have you guys kind of drafted something? Is there or something that you can then say, hey, COC, here's some good policies and procedures if we want to make this official?
We just had to have like the bylaws written into the COC, for under the COC. So we were working on like a best practices list that is not at all complete yet. And once again, it's coming from the work, right? It's coming like from the tried and true, what didn't work, what did work kind of thing.
That's helpful.
Yeah. So can you share with some of the other folks kind of what you have on there?
Being document ready, being ready to roll. Excuse me, I was trying to like stop coughing, so I put myself on mute a second. Give me 1 second here.
Sure.
So
And while you're, okay, you're back. I was gonna say, while you're coughing, while you're coughing, I'll ask you a question. What is the, oh my God, why are the words leaving my mind multiple times today? Natalie? How are you defining document readiness? Thank you, Mindy.
This is also from a realtor standpoint. It is very much impressive when someone comes to look at a rental and they've got everything, right? Here's my application, here's my copy of my license, here's all of that. Knowing that a lot of clients show up and they don't have those things. So sometimes there's some footwork that has to get done for, before you step in. So that's what I mean by being document ready.
So on the day that they're looking for the unit, they have everything. That's great.
Right. Especially because it's such a competitive market, right? If they're gonna look at it and then I am dying here. Then go try to round up docs, it doesn't work.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a different perspective on document ready that I think a lot of us think about. Which is great.
From a housing first standpoint, you're like, no, not document ready. Everybody's ready. That's a really, I like this one. And even though folks don't have this, no one has this officially on the call yet, like a full-blown centralized one, but it's part of like somebody's function in a centralized landlord engagement system is like knowing what do landlords need from us really quickly, right? How do we make sure that we are either have folks ready with that stuff, right? There's somebody's job that's working on that. Or think about this too, right? Like is part of what we're doing with landlord engagement, having a way to kind of say, have units available for us, trust us that this stuff is going to happen, right? That you can trust us, you're building that trust while we're working on document readiness kind of stuff.
I think I'm done choking. Our other main point, I wish I had the list in front of us. I apologize because I know we only have 3 that were like, okay, that has to be on there. The other one is that, navigate, period. Like we are the navigators. And people, I sometimes used to have a lot of clients and someone's like, oh, I found this place. And it's real easy, because you're already swamped and you got to go on other appointments with other people to be like, oh, well, you should go look at it or what have you. The more control from the front end that navigators can have of doing, those initial contacts and doing that, this is in case by case basis, keep in mind, right? Ideally, this is a landlord we work with, but that's not the real world. You're going to talk to people that you've never had a relationship with. And in those cases, for us to take control of the situation, make the initial contact, do the negotiating, be at the appointments, be at the showing, that kind of thing.
What else? Does anyone else have any policies, any best practices that have come out of your experience you can share?
Or ideas for policies or questions you want to ask about policies. This is your space.
Just to kind of piggyback off of what Natalie was talking about, some of the other things that we have going on in Lake County with the Housing Navigator Committee, we actually came up with a formula for shared housing roommate matching. And we got together and started discussing, what kind of issues may come up with roommates. So we have a form that we created, and if we have a client who's interested in potentially sharing a house with somebody, we ask them questions like, what are your absolute no's? What kind of a roommate are you looking for? And then also some of your own habits to kind of get an idea of who we may be able to match within a home, so we can move forward with shared housing, and just try and help these other clients who can't afford, their own home here in Lake County, an opportunity to be able to be housed successfully.
Love it. Love it. I think the shared housing piece too, and again, we'll have a separate training just on shared housing, but part of the consideration on shared housing is it's still part of the landlord pitch, right? Landlords may or may not have concerns about shared housing, and who is doing the sharing, and depending on your funding stream, each of the people that's in the unit has to have their own lease, right? Especially if you're matching two rapid rehousing clients, for example, and landlords may or may not be down with that. So that's part of like being able to negotiate that and navigate that. Yeah, shared housing is one of my favorite things, as you guys know. So yeah. Anyone else have thoughts, ideas about good policies and procedures for centralizing landlord engagement? What you think you might need, what you're struggling with thinking about how to formulate?
I know for our area, one of the biggest challenges that we're coming up against when we're trying to get our group together is talking about our different funding streams and the limitations of each funding stream. So rapid housing comes with this, and we have like 8 different types of rental assistance vouchers, and this one maybe comes with signing bonuses and deposits, and this one maybe doesn't. So, I know that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out in our community is how do we get a funding source that allows us even to offer the same thing for every subsidy holder, for every person in household, that doesn't come with all of the bureaucratic red tape, that
yes.
we can say, hey, look, this is, every person is able to get this same package. Every landlord is able to get this same package when they work with us. But so we're looking for those dollars. We're hopeful.
This is a really, really hard one. This is, and you guys have heard me, my ideal world, like my ideal centralized collective impact model on homelessness and coordinated entry and all of that stuff is like the landlord doesn't know what the funding stream is. The client doesn't know what the funding stream is, but somehow we have internally figured it all out. So, so it doesn't matter you don't have to explain to the landlord, this is ERA, or this is ESGCV, or this is an emergency housing voucher, for COVID-19, or you don't have to explain to the client, like you're category 1 or you're category 2 or you're category 4, or, like this is a FUP voucher from the child welfare system. It's just, we have worked it out that we have these resources available in our community to pay for housing. And we figured it out that all of those folks on the front end don't have to navigate any of that. And Dorothy, I bless you. I think there's ways to do it, and I don't have the easy answer right now. Abby, one day you and I can have a long conversation about unified funding agencies. It's appealing to me theoretically. I don't know what that looks like administratively, but I think there has to be a way to kind of make even that administrative and financial stuff more centralized and easy, so that we don't, again, I think if we're always like, whatever it is we're doing, trying to bring everybody back to like the ending homelessness thing, right? Is this helping end homelessness, or is this stopping us from ending homelessness? And that all of that bureaucracy is stopping us from getting folks into housing. So let's figure it out, right? Like the same conversation that we had about, let's have a reality check with ourselves as providers and acknowledge, like, providers have their own interests that may not be the interest of the community in ending homelessness. Doesn't mean we're bad people. It just means like that's the nature of being a provider. And agencies also have that, right? And so again, collective impact model, like trying to bring it all back to this one thing that we're trying to get to, is what we're doing getting us there or moving us away from it? If it's moving us away from it, let's figure out a way to not do it that way, right? That's super hard, super hard, but I think that's what we have to get to, and having that touchstone of always coming back to, is this moving us towards ending homelessness or away from ending homelessness, is one of the ways that I think about getting there. Oh, Rachel, I missed this. You said in the comments, sometimes scripting for conversations for one concise message. What was that in context of?
I think I think what was happening at that time is we were talking about different levels we wanted for best practices and making sure that there's like uniformity, especially when you're working with a variety of agencies that all have had to have their own, I guess, script of conversation when they're talking with landlords, but really making sure that like the navigators and the locators are all on the same page and they're using the same messaging with their landlords and the same explanation with their clients for case management. Was I think more where I was coming from with that, not necessarily like word for word, like verbatim, like monologuing style, but really making sure that we're hitting the same points when we're talking, because I think that that's really beneficial.
Thank you. Other folks, thoughts, ideas, questions about good policies and procedures? Darnisha and the San Diego crew, I know you guys have done a lot more work moving towards centralization, still a lot of work to go, but any thoughts that you guys have, how you've pulled together kind of policies and procedures on this work?
Thanks for asking, Mindy. So I've been with Regional Task Force on Homelessness since February 17th, last 8.5 years. I've worked for former Mayor Kevin Faulkner. So I did work with all our large providers for unsheltered population. So VBSD, Father Joe's, Alpha Project, and then also some of the smaller community base who's like really boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And they just saw the need and stepped up, and they're absolutely amazing. And I worked with a coalition of pastors. And so I'm bringing those relationships into this position. I was on the 21 cities with the Downtown Partnership and Interfaith. So I am familiar with what you're talking about and been a landlord more than once myself, okay? So what are some of the things that I saw and heard and we dealt with in the mayor's office trying to get landlords on board, focusing on veteran housing? And in this role, I'm working with homeless veterans and youth in LGBTQ plus community. And the landlords themselves, they were confused. What I noticed when I was on 21 cities, the messaging, like different providers that they worked with would tell them one thing and the next one would tell them something that was slightly different. So my conversation, to add to everything I've heard today, which is really great. Natalie had some really great points as being a landlord myself, and is that making sure that the messaging is consistent, making sure that they have that one point of contact for whatever's going on. Even if the tenant has been a great tenant, but all of a sudden, excuse me, they're having an incident, right? And they're starting to spiral, right? Different things trigger the PTSD. I work with the veterans for over 20 some odd years in those spaces. So just making sure they know what their resources are and who their key person to get to those resources in a timely manner. There was a lot of good comments as it's related to the pros and cons of working with the people that we serve. But on that elevator pitch, I had written something down, and I'm not saying anything because I'm not really in the housing space, but since you asked, I'm going to share. So I had written, I'm reaching out to you on behalf of the RTFH as it relates to your housing stock. I look to locate housing that we can subsidize for our clients. Do you have a few minutes to chat? Because the word subsidy, they're like, oh, I'm going to get some guaranteed money every month, right? So I think it's important. It's not what we say, but how we say it, just to get in the door. right? And then we can start talking about our client base, the type of clients that we have, right? And then also put the fears for us with some of those stereotypes about the clients that we serve, okay? And when we are talking about people's fears, don't, in my opinion, run away from the light, run into the light, right? And then tell them how you're going to manage that, how I'm going to protect you, how I'm going to safeguard. And if anything happens, you know I'm here for you. And I think it's very important to build those strong relationships, those relationships of trust. You know what, here's my cell number. You can call me anytime, right? So I think those things have a huge impact on my level of confidence about what you're asking from me, and that the service you're going to give me along with guaranteed rent every month. So that's what, you know, I'm listening to everything and, you know, things I've done and things I've been involved in. Those are the things that I wanted to share with the group today. So thanks for asking.
Thank you for sharing. Awesome, awesome, awesome contributions. I love the run into the light. And for those of you of a certain age, do you remember the movie Poltergeist?
Mm-hmm.
Go into the light, Carolyn. Yes.
Darnisha, I think with your pitch, I think it's very elegantly simple, and it speaks in a transactional way, like that the landlords are going to be able to hear, but hits all the right notes. Very, very subtle, very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. See, I know I'm working. You guys can see me working, but I'm paying attention. Okay. I can't multitask.
You're better than me, Darnisha. I can't. It's getting worse and worse. Natalie, I see your hand raised.
I was wondering if Darnisha might have, I love the whole, the phrasing of, you know, looking for places to subsidize for clients. I don't know if everyone's working off more so vouchers. We are not. We have like 40 for the county. So a lot of our navigation is not falling upon vouchers. We sometimes have incentives to offer for move-in, and sometimes that is it. Like we can cover first month in deposit, and we can give some, you know, client support, but sometimes that is where it ends as far as subsidy. Ms. Darnisha, do you have a tip for us of how we might tweak that? Because that's brilliant. I love that phrasing, but it's not always what we're pitching. Would you have any pointers for us maybe?
Sorry, I was having a hard time getting off mute there. What I can do is I can check with my team. Is everybody working off grant funding, the NOFA and different things that are on this meeting to help pay for some of those things? No, yeah.
Like for our county, it's yes and no.
Yeah.
Is yes and no, Natalie?
Yeah, like everyone's running off of different grants. Everyone's running off of, you know, different funding streams. And that's the biggest problem, is that what one agency can offer is not always the same as what someone else can offer. So like currently, yes, we are trying to do drastic placement for EHV because we happen to get the vouchers. But previous to that, we didn't have any federal subsidy for the last 4 years. So in normal circumstances, we're giving like a month or two rent as far as subsidy, and then stepping out of the game. So I just thought maybe, you know, is there any pitch? Because like the subsidized, like how you worded that is brilliant, but I'm hoping, like how do we make that ours? You know what I mean? If you have any pointers.
If the pot is empty, the pot is empty, right? So one of the things that we had to do when we were in the mayor's office, we were hit with Hep A. I know some of you guys might have seen that. It went pretty national. My mom's in Ohio and she called me, right? And yeah, it was bad. And we didn't have anything in the pot, okay? And so what we did, we were blessed enough to have the Padres here. Like we have Fortune 500 companies here, right? So we went to them and pitched, you know, we have to get our own shelter population, you know, off city streets. We need to do sanitation. Now, Natalie, yours isn't that extreme, but if you have businesses, companies, organizations, pro teams in your community or nearby community that most of them are looking to give money away, right? So I would start looking at them, tapping those resources. You're a realtor, you know a lot of people who have money. Start tapping your resources and asking for warm introductions to those big giant companies. And you know what, this is what we need, you know, and find a budget that you can present to them, put your package together, do a PowerPoint, get your local municipality on board. I don't care if it's just one council member that supports what you're doing, you want that council member, right? And sit down and you guys strategize how to pitch and bring them into City Hall, right? Make them feel important, like, wow, we're down at City Hall, because people like that. They do, they like that. And have that meeting and strategize on what you're going to present to them, why you're presenting and why it's important. This is what we've been able to do so far, but we can move the needle a lot further if you helped, right? Because if you don't have access to those subsidies, you have to ask from the private sector. I hope that was helpful.
Great
It
insight.
totally was. And it's actually going to speak to why we're going to go back to the COC and pitch that we need a nonprofit.
Nice.
We can't
Yeah.
take that money right now. I can't go solicit funds at this point on behalf of the COC.
But what you can do, if you have a nonprofit that has a good track record with funding, they can be your physical agent.
Right.
There's always another way to skin that cat. You know, don't wait until, you know, that organization says, okay, we're going to become a nonprofit. You find a nonprofit that's working in the space that you're supporting and they have a really strong relationship with funding and the record keeping is good, and they can be your physical agent.
Thanks so much.
Thanks all of you. Who's closing us out?
You're welcome.
Great conversation.
I believe I'll be closing us out. Thank you, Mindy, and thank you, Abby, for creating this space. This was actually a lot of fun to just listen to, watch you all share information with one another. This does conclude this workshop series, but that doesn't mean it's the end. If you are interested in working with Mindy or Abby or us to further this work one-on-one, we have that ability. You'll be receiving the PowerPoint materials and the recording and a survey from Kristen. Let us know. You can either email Kristen directly or myself directly off of that email and say, yep, I'd like to go a little bit deeper. I want to talk about X, and can Mindy or Abby come and talk about X? And the answer is yes, most likely. So I wanted to just pitch that there is opportunity for more work should you want to go a little bit deeper on centralized landlord engagement. With that, thank you for attending the California Housing and Community Development Community Workshop offered through the Emergency Solutions Grant, Coronavirus Relief, Consulting and Staffing Services Contract. This concludes the Landlord Engagement Recruitment and Retention Workshop Series on centralized landlord engagement. Have a great day, everybody.
Chris, don't hang up.
Sorry,
don't hang up.
Tanisha had a question.
Oh my God.